How many years has Carmelo Anthony been on the Knicks at this point, where the trade rumors have just been rampant about him just wanting out? It makes sense for both parties, you know. Melo wants to be on a winner, especially because he's older, and then you got the Knicks who want to get some assets because they suck, and then Phil Jackson's whole thing. It's been quite a tale that's been going on for the past few seasons with Melo and the Knicks. And now Carmelo Anthony has stated that the one team that he would like to be traded to is the Houston Rockets, because of course Melo has the no trade clause that Phil Jackson gave him for some frickin' reason. Here's the thing, a Melo to Houston trade is so difficult to make happen that it makes sense that no move has happened at this point, and I think it's a fair thing to believe that a trade will end up not happening and New York would be forced to buy Melo out. They could just let him ride out the season because he's got the early termination option. But at the same time, I think it's possible a move can happen, but it's not going to be easy. So the maiden trade piece for Houston would have to be Ryan Anderson, because given Melo's salary, which is up there, you're going to need Ryan Anderson's, $20 million to facilitate that kind of a move. And even then, you might have to throw Trevor Ariza in there, which I'm sure Houston would not want to do. Maybe the recent signings of PJ Tucker and Ba Mute would help that out, but I don't think those guys have the three-point potential that Ariza has. But Daryl Morey's a pretty creative general manager. Or is he the owner? I don't know what he is. But he's the guy running the show. And he's pretty creative with this type of stuff, so I think he could find a way to hold on to almost everyone besides Ryan Anderson. But I mentioned Anderson's contract. The dude's legit making $20 million for the next 3 seasons. And I'm sure teams would be willing to take on Ryan Anderson because he's a good NBA player on one side of the floor, and he's a stretch 4 and he's awesome from 3, and teams want guys who can shoot threes. However, he doesn't really do much else well. He's not a post-up player. I wouldn't want him attacking the rim consistently. He's not athletic, and he sucks on defense. And all that for $20 million, it's not really worth it. The third team that would have to be taking on Ryan Anderson would have to be really precise. I feel like the type of team it could be would be a team that is not good, who will not be good for a few seasons, and as a result, they're not really players in the free agent market, which means they'd be willing to take on Anderson anyway, even if he's going to eat up some of their salary, because maybe he could just provide spacing for some of their young guys. One team that I actually thought about in that one was the Sacramento Kings, but I have to assume because they already have Zach Randolph that they're not really going to want to mess that up with Ryan Anderson. But I could picture something like that, you know, if De'Aaron Fox, you just want him to have a lot of room to operate, you get Ryan Anderson in there for the next 3 seasons, it kind of makes sense. I think a team like the Orlando Magic, who are just desperate for outside shooting, maybe they would take on Anderson, but even then, they have Gordon at the 4, Isaac might be a small forward or a power forward. You want to pay $20 million for a guy coming off the bench. But the other problem with that is, for the salaries to work, the third team would probably have to send something to the Knicks to, 1, recover from the fact they're going to take on $20 million of Ryan Anderson. And of course, Houston's not going to take on the guy for Ryan Anderson because they're already getting Melo and he makes a lot of money. So that means the Knicks have to approve of the guy that they're getting in the 3-team deal. It's a freaking headache. And I'm pretty sure the Knicks are not going to want, Nick Vucevic with his $12 million. So, it's kind of rough, you know? Now, maybe they would just say, well, it's less money than Melo was making, but even then, I wouldn't do that sort of a thing. There was one interesting move that I actually saw on, I think it was Bleacher Report. Someone had the idea of the Pistons being the third team involved, and it was basically Carmelo Anthony to the Rockets, Ryan Anderson, as well as Trevor Ariza to the Pistons, and then Tobias Harris to the Knicks. Now, I think that's the type of move that could work in terms of the framework of the move, but the problem with that particular move is that the Pistons would essentially be choosing 32-year-old Trevor Ariza and Ryan Anderson over Tobias Harris, which I would not do, because I like Harris's potential quite a bit. But I guess that sort of a move could be the framework of one. And I could sit here and I could act like I have the perfect solution and the perfect trade idea. This stuff's kind of hard, man. Name me one NBA GM who's willing to take on Ryan Anderson at $20 million. It is what it is. And the other thing that sucks about this is that Houston is not going to be able to send a first-round pick to the team wanting Ryan Anderson, or not wanting Ryan Anderson, but getting him, you know, to facilitate taking on the contract. You get a first-round pick, your salary goes up, and you kind of bite the bullet. Brooklyn Nets style. The problem is Houston's already going to have to send a first-round pick to the Knicks in this move at all. So now, what, Houston's going to give up 2 firsts for Carmelo Anthony? That's a lot to ask for. Now, maybe Daryl Morey's just that aggressive that he would do it, but I mean, that's kind of a lot, man. You know, those assets can be used for other stuff. And they already don't have their 2018 pick because that's going to go to Atlanta, unless they finish bottom 3, which of course is not going to happen. Them being the Rockets finishing bottom 3. So there's just not a whole lot of draft picks that they really have at their disposal. So the team that takes on Ryan Anderson, it's going to have to be so perfect of a situation in terms of how far they are away from winning and the whole 9 yards. I mean, I kind of thought of the Phoenix Suns because they have a lot of salary caps, so it'd be easier for them to take on someone like a Ryan Anderson. But they don't really have anyone the Knicks would just be clamoring to get. I mean, there is Eric Bledsoe, but they just drafted Ntilikina, the Knicks, and Bledsoe's a little older, and I would assume New York is a few years away from winning here, so if they made that sort of a move, they'd be hoping that that could translate to some wins right now. Other than that, I mean, there's Jared Dudley, he's okay. Even if Brandon Knight can revitalize his career, he's still making about $14 million for 3 seasons, and I mean, you know, he's whatever. Also, I should say with Eric Bledsoe, it would take way more than just Ryan Anderson for them to part with him, which is just the big challenge with this move. And I think that's the thing with this. The chances of the Knicks getting a first-round pick from Houston and a player in return from a third team that is actually good, that's tough because that third team is taking on Ryan Anderson, which means, you know, how much of an asset really is Anderson because of his contract? You get what I'm saying at this point. For half a moment, I even had an idea of the Milwaukee Bucks, or maybe the Bucks would send, like, Mirza Teletovic to the Knicks, and then they would take on Ryan Anderson. And I think the only reason they would do that is if they really feared that Jabari Parker was just not himself whatsoever. But even then, you're still committing to the guy for 3 years being Ryan Anderson, so you get it at this point. I'm sure there's a move that you could construct out there that actually works, but it'll take too damn long for me to do it right now. But I'm just kind of explaining, like, in my opinion at least, why Carmelo Anthony to Houston, it can happen, but it's going to be pretty damn difficult.